All right, you guys, we're doing a mid-season review. No fancy intro because I can't think of one. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinho. There we go. Jacinho Tweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. And on today's show, we're going to be doing a mid-season review. Haven't seen too many people doing these. We usually do, but I think the, craziness of the transfer window or lack thereof, Aubameyang leaving and all of that just kind of took away from, maybe wanting to just review what we've been through so far and what we expect for the rest of the season. I think this is a good time to do it. Plus, I'd already planned to do it. So yeah, got to keep up with what we say we're going to do. And it's been a roller coaster of a half season so far. I would say that it's no different than any other Arsenal season for me, where it's just up and down roller coaster, and we're going to go through it all. And you're probably wondering who is we. We is me and Sophie. Sophie from the Highbury Squad is here with me today, and she's my special guest, so treat her nicely. And I'm sure there's some squaddies in here, so yeah, let's do this. Hey, Soph.
Hey, Jess. How you doing? At ease? And I love the new hair. That is fire. Woo! Looking hot. I love it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It just gets bigger as the day goes. So
I love it. The bigger, the better.
We'll see what happens. But you're getting tons of love in the chat. Tony says, hey, Sophie.
Hey, guys.
Sophie.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We got some squaddies in here. MK showed up. So yeah, we have lots to talk about. A lot has happened this season, and I think it's time for a little therapy session to just kind of talk about what we've been through. And I wanted to start off with probably the most recent news, and just start out by asking you, if before the season started, I would have told you that Aubameyang would be no longer an Arsenal player by January, would you have believed me?
I don't think so. Because I think when the season started, we were hoping we would get the Aubameyang of the previous seasons. The FA Cup season Aubameyang, the Aubameyang who joined the club, who won the Golden Boot, and, who was our captain and someone who everyone loved inside the dressing room and outside of the dressing room. So I don't think I would have believed you, Jess, and I felt at the beginning of the season that he would re-emerge. I always like to look at the positives when we kick things off, and I really thought that he would regain his form, that he would just trot on and be the guy that we knew. So yeah, I mean, it's very disappointing how it's all ended, but it's the right decision for all parties, I do believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a divisive conversation because so many people felt as though he was our best player, one of our best players, somebody that a lot of people attribute the FA Cup win to, and he was a huge, huge part of that. Why do you think that things just haven't worked out? I mean, he kind of went into the press. He was asked the question, so it's not like he went out there and did like rage tweeting or anything. He was asked on stage, to talk about what happened at Arsenal, and he just basically said he didn't get along with Arteta. What do you think?
Yeah,
he could have.
He could have. Okay, so here's the scoop, and I agree with Kev on our show. What we've said is when he was benched, and the team went on that incredible run and scored more goals without him. As a leader and a captain, it would have been great to see him take a moment to tweet or put an Instagram out and say, well done, boys. I'm proud of you. I will be back. Arsenal fans, I love you. I will show you again that this is my club. I want to be a legend here, etc. Whatever he wanted to say, but he did zero of that. He did none of that. And even in the times where he didn't play well as a captain, he never came to the forefront to talk to the media. That really happened when he would score a hat-trick or he'd have a good game. And so I felt that he had the opportunity to be a bit more classy and say, look, that's in the past. I want to move forward. And the truth is that he did show ill discipline in times where he said he was here, he was having a tattoo. You know, the North London derby for me was the most unforgivable of all. And at the end of the day, when Arteta's trying to change a DNA and culture, and as you know, Jess, I've been tough on Arteta, and rightly so. In this instance, he has my full support. And this goes back to what Tony Adams said back in the day. It doesn't matter what the name on the back of the shirt is, it's who you play for on the front of the shirt. And I think a little bit like Ozil, they felt like they got bigger than the club. You can't have players controlling a dressing room. You can have players be powerful in the dressing room, but as a unit, as a group. And I think Aubameyang should not have said that. Go to Barcelona, move on. Kudos for you getting a deal for not having scored how many goals in 40 plus games. Well done getting a move to Barcelona, you and your agent. I applaud you. But you know what? Just don't fuel the fire. It's unnecessary. And as for all these Arsenal fans calling him a legend, that whole argument's been brewing on social media today, Jess. He's not an Arsenal legend. He had a great chapter at the Arsenal, and I wouldn't even consider it an era, let alone a legendary career.
Yeah, I mean, he was at the club for 4 years. It was 4 years to the day, and for me, I think there's more positive memories than negative. But this last, you know, 18 months has just felt so like what happened to the Aubameyang that scored the goal against Chelsea in the FA Cup final. Like literally since then, he just has not been the same guy. And I've been very vocal about being kind of like, okay, well, he needs to go, if he's not feeling it, which is kind of was odd. Like I know that some people get upset when I project, because you can't really tell body language. You're not supposed to read body language and all this, but Aubameyang was not in it. He had left the building, and you can tell because the smile was gone. And I'm like, once the smile is gone, he's pretty much not useless to us, but he's less usable and less beneficial to us than maybe Lacazette has been. So I'm okay with him going, but a lot of Arsenal fans feel like this goes back to the man management question that we had last season. And you said, you think that Arteta has kind of done the right thing here. But I know you've criticized him about the man management thing. So
yes.
What situations have happened this season that were man management issues versus the Aubameyang one? Maybe Maitland-Niles, maybe, that situation, because that was a weird one too that happened this season.
The reason I hold Aubameyang to a higher account is because he was the captain of the club. And that comes with a lot more accountability and responsibility and leadership, right? Especially when you have young players like Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe and Martinelli, and when they were Aziz is back, but Balogun, all of these young players. And then new players coming into the fold that haven't played in the Premier League before, like Tomiyasu, like Gabriel. You have to be a leader and show the way. And that's why I hold him to a higher account. Now, with that caveat, as much as I stand by Arteta, there is this issue with regards to how certain players are treated versus others. And you can point to the Saliba situation. Now, the Saliba PR machine seems to be kicking in over the last couple of days, doesn't it, Jess? In the sense that here's a player we paid 27 million for. He's been on loan for almost 3 years. And now it looks like he might be coming back to the club, and hasn't played like all but one game in the Premier League. There's one way to look at it. You play, yes, competitively in Liga for a very good and tough Marseille team against maybe 4 or 5 really good teams. But then you could argue that the Premier League hasn't been that great this year, and you're playing against 10 or 12 really good teams versus what's happening below the table. But there's character issues, I think, for Arteta, and he needs to be very careful about how he handles that. Pepe gets sent off and is kind of scolded about it. Xhaka gets sent off over and over, gets patted on the back as he goes off the pitch. Ceballos has horror shows in the Europa League and continually gets picked. Guendouzi has a punk moment against Brighton, doesn't apologise, gets ostracised, right? So there is this question of why forgiveness for some and not others. And I think there needs to be a bit more of a balance in that, because what it shows is, can you not manage senior players,
Mm.
right? But then why does Xhaka get a pass,
Mm.
right? So that's a question mark. Do you only want to manage younger players? Okay, we see that in Emil Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Saka, and a few others. But then why doesn't Guendouzi get a chance? Why can't
Hmm.
you manage him and say, listen, you little a-hole, this is what you need to be able to do to play for the Arsenal. And if you can't meet this criteria, you won't play for us. But I'm going to help you because you know why? You're a really good midfielder. And I believe you could be a great midfielder in the modern game. But he didn't do that. And that's where the rubber meets the road for me and the rubber meets the road for a lot of Arsenal fans. And unfortunately, I don't know the answer and I can't explain it. But he does it and it's there and it's real and it's not cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, my thing with Arteta is that I kind of feel like this is who he's going to be as a manager. I think
Hmm.
that this is, you know, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I think this is kind of who he's going to be. He's going to have his favorites, and most managers do have favorites, but he has his favorites. They can kind of get away with things. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, but it kind of feels like if you have a certain type of personality and you step outside the line, you're done. You're done at the first or second sight of whatever this character trait is. And when you look at kind of how, and we'll talk more about the signings and stuff like that, and if we're being, his choices over the last year have helped us or hindered us. But when you look at somebody like Lakanga, you may have not had to spend that money if you could have, like you said, put your arm around Guendouzi and been a little bit more flexible with
Hmm.
him. If you were a little bit more flexible with Saliba, maybe you don't spend the 50 million on Ben White and we spend it on something else. So that's definitely a conversation or something that I feel like I want to see change a little bit, but I'm not sure we're going to see it because I kind of feel like this is who he is.
Yeah, but also like let's take a look at Ceballos had some horror shows in Europa League that year that it was a disaster, right? He gets a
Mhm.
pass, continues to play, but Nuno, a young player, has a horror show in a first half of an FA Cup, which,
Mhm.
let's be honest, that team was a complete horror all the way around. It was just more glaring for him because he was so much more exposed to get subbed before halftime. What does that do to a player's psyche? Now, either the manager knows that he can handle that and he's going to improve from that, or he's trying to show to everybody, this is what's going to happen on my watch.
Yeah.
But then you there's so many other performances to point to that say, well, this player should have been subbed before half time, and this player should have been. So that's the issue I think Arsenal fans have, Jess. It's very up and down. Now the other argument is that what do people do in training? What does the manager see in training,
Yeah.
right? That we don't know about.
Yeah, and I think that something that's been pointed out is that there's on the field performances and then off the field. And for me, those are more the sticking points for me with Nuno versus Ceballos. I have to go back and look and see who could have been brought in for Ceballos, but I think the fact that Ceballos was playing probably shows us that we probably didn't have a lot of options in midfield, but he had Tierney readily available, so Nuno came off, and so I'm willing to kind of step back on that. But it feels
Hmm.
like if you perform badly on the pitch and you're kind of somebody that Arteta leans upon or likes, it's fine. But the things that are outside off of the pitch, in terms of being accountable and being a leader and being responsible, those are the things that there's not a lot of grace for. And so I feel like that might be just who Arteta is, and we just have to hope that Saka and ESR and Martinelli are always on their best behavior under Arteta because, I because I'm not as connected to Aubameyang and the players that have left, it hasn't really hit me that hard. But I do
Yeah.
feel like with our younger players, I hope that they never step out of line because I always think about what if that's Saka in the future. I don't know if it will be, you know what I mean? But we don't know who they'll be when they get a little bit older, or
No, we
who
don't. We
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 don't
don't.
know. So it's definitely
But I
something to
think
look
I
at.
think also Aubameyang, Lacazette, El Neni, like, some of the, okay, Cola's gone, Chambers is gone. We've seen the sweeping, the brooms come out. It's the end of the Wenger and the Emery signings. Aubameyang's that, Lacazette's going to go. You know, El
Tierney's
Neni's
really going to
actually,
be the only one left because
yeah, he
Leno will
is.
go.
Yep. I
Pepe will
mean,
probably go soon.
El Neni's had a great AFCON. Some people actually think he's been one of the best players of the tournament, right? Which that's all well and good because then it's the same thing as, oh, we played well in the FA Cup, we won it, we can challenge for the Premier League. That still doesn't mean he can come in and elevate our club in midfield, right? We have to be
Right.
really careful of those things. And then Xhaka's the one that just seems Teflon. I mean, the dude can do, it's kind of like in school or in a workplace where you're like, how's that dude coming late all the time or continually F up and yet nothing ever happens to him, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even when it comes to transfers, he seems to be saved. Like I knew he was gone in the summer and he's still here. So, yeah, there you
You
go.
said
But
it on a show with me. You said it, Jess. Just in case the listeners need to know, Jess said, mark my words, it is not the end of that guy. And you said it. You
it's
absolutely
never
called
the
that.
end of that guy. He's like, I don't know if Arteta sees a little bit of Xhaka in
I
him or
think it was on
something.
Lee's channel, wasn't it, when
Yeah,
we did a show?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's one
yeah.
of those where you're like, okay, he's not going anywhere. But I want to ask you, and I'll let you know what I thought before the season started. What were your expectations going into the season? In terms of where we should finish, the football. A lot of people had questions around the football. Is it going to get any better? Are we going to play more attacking football? Is it going to be so the horseshoe of death? Is that going to go away? We spent 150 million, and the expectation was to elevate. At least for me and a lot of other Arsenal fans. What about you? What were your expectations before the season started?
So for me, I'm being honest, I was very supportive of our summer signings from the get go. I always felt like we need to give them a chance. They can't be any worse than what we have. Let them wear the shirt and play a game before we go all out on, critiquing them. All I wanted for this season in the Premier League, if I'm being completely honest, was for us to find a consistency and build a consistency where we have performance after performance that then grows into more competitiveness and allows us to see an Arsenal that is emerging and reinventing itself. I had no expectations about top four. To be honest with you, I wasn't even sure if we would finish in the top six, although I wanted us to do that, of course. My ultimate goal was if we can win one of the cups, it would be great. But if we could find our way back to Europe through the FA Cup, that's where I was putting all my eggs in that basket because we've got the pedigree. We're the best team that's ever performed in that competition. And then if the League Cup comes as a bonus, we haven't won it since 93, and do a cup double. How great for this young team to feel what it is to win, to build a winning culture, and to have them have that incredible experience. And just those were my true feelings at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of where it gets interesting because I think a lot of people felt like you, Sophie. A lot of people kind of felt like they didn't know what to expect from the signings. I think a lot of Arsenal fans were disappointed by the signings because we didn't go out and get the marquee midfielder, and we also didn't touch the striker position. And the narrative, whether it was coming from within the fan base or outside, was that we had just wasted 150 million on backup. So I think the level of expectation was quite low, especially after the first three matches where we had 0 points and 9 goals against and no goals for. It was crazy. Then fast forward, there's a top four spot that nobody really thought would be there, and it's mostly due to the fact that Manchester United were poor. That's really what it is, and we were able to jump into that spot. We kind of have been in and around there. Do you think that our expectations, now that we've seen that there's a spot open, should change? Or do you think we should stick with the original expectations? Because a lot of people now are like, if we don't make top four, the season is a failure because the spot was there to be had. But I still look at the team that I'm seeing now, and I think it's still not good enough for top four. And now that Manchester United are kind of regaining some form, it
Yeah.
really looks like it's still top six for me. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Let's be honest, we've overachieved, you know, and I think that the team did not invest in January because they had a plan for this season. And they stuck to their plan A and they didn't shift to plan B to throw money at the transfer window in order to get that top four. They're rolling the dice on what we have, and they kept to their strategic objectives in moving on who they wanted to. Now, Aubameyang may be the only player that they weren't banking on moving in January. But
Yeah.
because of the way things happened and transitioned, he became a bit of a plan B, and they never had in their minds what was going to be or who was going to be that replacement, hence the pursuit of Vlahovic, which was never going to happen. I mean, it was a total waste of time. They knew that that player wanted to join Juventus from the get-go. And for me, that felt like a bit of a smokescreen, old school Arsene Wenger. Well, we went in for Benzema. Well, we went in for X. We went in for Suarez. We went in for, you know. So there's that part. And it's also a bit like a relationship where you start dating someone and you're like, I'm not sure. But then you go out a few times, you
Mm-hmm.
kiss, and you're like, oh, well, hold on a second. I kind of like this person.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't expecting it. So then you're in a situation where you're like, what do I do? And I think Arsenal are in that type of situation right now in this part of the season. And I believe their plans were always to strengthen again in the summer, and they haven't compromised their position in order to pursue that fourth spot. So it's a big gamble, but at the same time, for them, it's a calculated risk because they never thought, I really don't think they thought they would be in this position. I don't think the owners thought that, the hierarchy thought that. As much as Arteta he believes that he could probably do anything, I don't even think he and Adu thought we could be in that. And you're right about United. And look what's happened. United haven't strengthened. Tottenham haven't strengthened. West Ham haven't strengthened. Tottenham have bought two players in from Juve who weren't really playing much, but I'm sure Conte will get lemonade out of them, you know. And
Well,
so,
their play was to get Luis Diaz,
yeah,
and Traore.
that
So
was a
they
disaster for
got,
them.
yeah, they got some backup options that Paratici was able to get them because of his connections to Juventus. But
Yes.
you're right, nobody really that we're fighting with to get into the top four/top six has really strengthened. So I think it's about the same thing that we have an opportunity to make it into the top four, but probably a little bit less than the other teams, but we're
Hmm.
still in and around there. But top six is an absolute must, especially because you've already mentioned about the cups, and we'll talk a little bit about being out of all the cups. Like, I think you and I kind of share that, where there's some fans that I feel like almost played it down, like being in cups doesn't matter, and I'm like, it actually does. Like, it matters a lot. And just watching other teams play in the FA Cup is actually like, it's hurting my heart.
I
But
hate it. I can't stand. I
yeah,
can't even watch. And you know what? Look how Pep's handled the League Cup over the years.
yeah,
He's taken it seriously, hasn't he? He's not poo-pooed that competition by any stretch. And Arteta won the FA Cup when he came in with the rest of, the Emery half season.
hmm,
But the last two seasons, we've tanked early.
yeah,
And that's a route back to Europe. And when the Premier League is hard and harder, even though it may not be as good below the fold, above the fold, you've got these teams like Wolves and Villa and,
Brighton.
Brighton. And I mean, Wolves are 2 points behind them. We play them twice this month. That's going to be pivotal, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as easy. And I feel like we blew it big time. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of spoke about our expectations, and I just want to go back a little bit to kind of how the season started. We played Brentford. That was tough, with the COVID cases and all of that, and
Hmm.
losing to a newly promoted side, then playing against Chelsea at home and losing 2-0, and then going to City and losing 5-0. And the beginning of the season was really tough. And then our new signings kind of came in
Hmm.
and brought us back up. I don't think the football was really that great. I think a lot of us were kind of like, okay, well, we're kind of getting some results and we're scraping by, but we're not really, you know, playing good football. and then we kind of go into this downturn again
Mm-hmm.
with Manchester United and Everton. And then we go into like a 5 game run where we're playing great football. We're scoring lots of goals. I think at that point we had scored like 20 goals, like a
2021 in
lot.
December, yeah.
Yeah, in December, Arteta is nominated for Manager of the Month. Martinelli is scoring goals. Saka, Odegaard, everybody's stepping up. And then we hit January and we kind of hit a wall. I
Mm-hmm.
guess my high point of the season so far would probably be that Man City game, but my low point was the Everton game. I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever felt that low under Mikel Arteta as I did at that moment. And the Everton
Mm-hmm.
match just hit me so badly because it was also right after the Manchester United game. And
Yeah.
I've never seen a team just go out there and just not have it, just not have it. And that was a really difficult one because I didn't know if we'd come back from it. I thought we were going into that long game, like long run of games where we're not going to win a couple and it's going to be really difficult and stuff. But that was our lowest low, but the highest high for me was that Man City match where I guess a lot of us went maybe a little bit too far,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a trophy,
Yeah.
second half against Man City, almost like a trophy, loving it. But we played so good in that game. And I rewatched it recently and I thought, okay, if we could if we could play more like that than we did in January, we'll
Mm-hmm.
probably be fine. But I
But we've
wanted
got to
to
have all those players available.
we have to have all those players available, and that's the difficult thing, and that's why January to me was a little bit of a letdown because we won't have all those players every single time. It's not possible. But
So
go ahead.
my lowest ebb, I think, with Arteta was the Europa League semi-final.
Villarreal.
Yeah. And also Arsenal Football Club not being in Europe after so many years.
Yeah.
That was really low. And the reason why it was super low is because he got scored by the man he replaced. And the
Mm.
man he replaced has won it 4 times, and the only time he didn't win it was when he was with us. And that was a tricky situation too because he had a very disengaged team. Of course, he made mistakes in that final, and Chelsea were just so much better. They were superior. So we were outcoached, outplayed, but there was so much apathy in that dressing room at the time that season I felt like, wow, football sucks, right?
Yeah.
The Everton game actually made me feel worse a few weeks after seeing Everton's regression because after that they went into a spiral and I was like, wow,
Well,
how
they
did
hadn't won a game from it.
no.
They hadn't won a game since September before they played us. They're still out of 20 matches. We're the only game that they got a win from.
Which is an insane stat. So I felt worse about that as time went on. I felt actually really bad after the United game because I felt at that time they were at their lowest. They had no confidence. They had low self-esteem as a team. I felt like we could have gone in for the kill. We gave them way too much respect, and that was a game we could have killed off like way early in the second half, the same way we did Tottenham in the
Mm-hmm.
first half, same way we did Leicester at the King Power. Two of our best halves of football I think we've played all season. And I thought that, wow, we could have won at Old Trafford. Those two games and the Burnley home game, 0-0, is almost worse than the Everton game because you think to yourself, sometimes a team could pull something out of their backside at home, right? But to not beat Burnley rock bottom of the table at home is not good. So for me, the United away game, considering we could have buried them, the Burnley home game, I think those 3 games, period, Jess, are going to come back to haunt us big time.
I mean, the difference between top four this season there's going to be points between top four and top six. And if we end up missing out on the top four or the top six by just 1 or 2 points, we will look back at Burnley. We'll look back at Everton. I know we will. I think the
Mm-hmm.
Brentford one is one that we can kind of rationalize away. We hadn't gotten our players, we had the COVID issues, but I don't know. It's just Everton really stuck with me. It really did because the kind of vitriol after, like the nasty aftertaste after was just, and that was also Aubameyang's last match for Arsenal,
Yeah.
I believe. So and we didn't know that at the time, but he came off the bench and he missed a sitter.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Nketiah missed a sitter as well.
Yeah.
Xhaka had came back in after not being, in the team for so long, and he came straight back in and he didn't play very well. Tierney didn't play well. Nobody played well. It felt like the refs were against us because Tomiyasu got stomped in the face. And I never want to see that Arsenal performance again. And I
No.
feel like we see it every 1 out of 5, 6 matches. We see something that's kind of
That's
similar to it, and we're like, oof, that doesn't make me
yeah.
feel good. And we have to see like basically none of those from now until the end of the season, right? In order to meet our goals.
Yeah, that's a problem. So, I don't like to bring up Emery a lot, but I have to in the sense that the 22 unbeaten game run, I know there were a lot of games in that time period, Jess, that weren't great. But the team still found a way to go on a 22 unbeaten game run. You played at college level. Consistency, competitiveness is everything. So regardless, our invincible team, the draws, they still found a way, even when they weren't playing well, to get a point, to get through the game. And so what I've been looking for from Arteta's Arsenal is how many games can you go on a run? How consistent can you be? And there's too many. We win 4. I think, was it 8 games this season we've gone unbeaten?
It was
Draws,
10.
wins
Well, it
10.
was 10 in
Okay,
all competitions or
10,
something. Yeah.
which isn't too bad, right? But at the same time, then there's 2 terrible games. There's an awful game. There's an X, Y, and Z game. So that's why, hence, I go back to my what I wanted at the beginning of the season was consistency and competitiveness. And at this point, this is his team, so I feel like he has to have been able to eradicate that a little bit more, because the performance against Burnley for me is even worse than Everton. You're away, you're up north, it's Everton, they're fighting for their lives. I get it, the crowd was behind them that night, but at home against Burnley, crikey, and at the end I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to steal this the way they did last season and it's going to just be brutal. But it felt like a loss anyway. So that's the tough pill to swallow, is the bad games in between. I think that's a great point that you bring up.
So did you say your high point? Did you have a high point,
This
or are
season,
you still waiting on a high point to come? I have to say, like, if I had to guess for you, it might be the Spurs match at
yeah, it
home.
was
Yeah.
that to me, that 35 minutes, I was like, wow.
That was a bomb.
I
We
was
we usually
like,
only have like 30 something minutes of like, oh, we're amazing.
I know.
30
I mean,
minutes.
I know the second half was not great, right? And we've had that a bit this season too.
Yeah.
Probably the Villa game too, where we dominated for so long. Second half wasn't great, so great. We didn't let Leicester creep in as much as those games away from home, but that that period, those 3 goals, I will bet on that all day long against City. And probably because we ended up losing the City game. And at some point, we've got to turn the tables to perform that well against City and not even come away with a point. That is brutal. That hurts. That hurts even more than the Everton game. You can't be that brilliant and come away with nothing. How do the Arsenal combat that? How do you mature and get in a situation where you can capitalize on all the hard work you've done and not lose the game in such a poor fashion at the very end, right? Even if we'd have come 1-1 away from that, everyone would have been euphoric. And people are still happy and we lost. But at some point, this Arsenal team has to turn that corner. So the high point for me is definitely Spurs, our rival. I felt this season we could finish above them because they were in a transition year. Didn't really think Nuno was going to do a great job. Got sacked, of course, I think now with Conte, just because he's very good at tactics and he's been there before. Despite the talent pool he has, he could be able to pull something out of them to end up in that 4th spot. I do think that 4th spot is between Man United and Tottenham.
It feels that way. It definitely feels that way. And because even when they don't play well, they seem to be able to pull out results. When we don't play well, we lose.
They've
You
been
know,
rubbish and they've been winning
yeah,
games. It's
yeah. That's one
crazy.
thing. we almost have to be perfect in order to win the games.
Exactly.
There's no margins for us. There's margins for them. But I also think that that has something to do with the fact that they have game winners in their team. And I do think that that's the next step for Arsenal, is to bring in the striker that's going to bail you out when you're not really playing well. You know, the type of striker that would put away the chance that Nketiah missed at Everton,
Yeah.
Aubameyang missed at Everton, Lacazette missed at home against Burnley. That's the player that we need. And we also need somebody to replace Granit Xhaka that can kind of be a real leader in the midfield, next to Thomas Partey. But that's definitely the next step for us. And
Son and Ronaldo aren't missing those chances too much, Jess.
well,
You
Ronaldo
know,
did miss the penalty today, which
well,
was
okay, he
nice.
missed the penalty, which was nice, but
But no, I do agree
generally,
with
you
what
know
you're
what I
saying.
mean?
Yeah. I mean, even, and I hate to say this, and I know this Arsenal show, and we're supposed to always speak poorly of Spurs, but if you have a Kane in your team, you can pretty much play like crap every single game and still kick it up to him, and something will happen. And
Yep.
we did have somewhat of that with Aubameyang for a short period of time, but it's different. Like, it's different when you have the Brunos in your team, the Ronaldos in your team, that can just kind of win the game for you even when you're
Yep.
not playing well. And I'm not sure who that is in the market for us. I don't know if those players are available to us, but we definitely need something better in the market coming to Arsenal in the summer. But this past summer, we spent a lot of money, 150 million. And
Yep.
so we're now going to talk about how our signings have done so far. But before that, we have like 130 of you guys watching, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to read these super chats, or the super chat that we got. The Truth Sets Free just sent the super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And the Truth Sets Free also said, big up Sophie. Nice flag in the background. Looking sharp.
Yes. I got the Greek flag there too, and you can't see the St. George's flag, but it's all my favorite countries represented. The US has become like my I've been here almost 20 years, Jess. 20 years I've
That's such a
lived in
long
America.
time.
I
That's
love
such a
it.
long time.
Absolutely love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm glad you're loving it. LA is special. Like, everybody loves LA. Our weather is so
Don't get
good.
me started on the Rams. I will never ever support them ever.
No, you don't have to support them. That's fine. I mean,
Okay.
I feel that. I definitely do. But the signings, we signed 6 players,
Yep.
and for the most part, I think most Arsenal fans feel like they've all been pretty successful. They've been really good, positive signings, and I think to some people's surprise as well. And I don't know. Let's go through. Well, let's before we talk about who's been the best and who's maybe been the worst signing. And I know that that sounds a little bit harsh because we think all of them have done well, but I think there's some range there if we can talk about it. But is not addressing the midfielder and the striker position like biting us in the ass? In hindsight, we did use that 50 million for Ben White. We kind of talked about this at the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
show, but 50 million for Ben White, that could have bought a midfielder or a striker. Xhaka, and Thomas Partey have only played together 7 times this season.
Mm-hmm.
Adu banked on that being our midfield, center midfield pairing. They've only played together 7 times this season, and we
Mm-hmm.
won 5 and scored like 20 goals. But that's 7 games out of the season, and even
Mm-hmm.
when you have Lakanga and Xhaka, or Thomas and Lakanga, it's not really the same, is it? And now we're kind of
No.
left here with Lacazette and Eddie, and none of us really feel comfortable with that. So, do you think that that 150 million spent, despite how much we love the players, was spent wisely now in hindsight that we went through half of the season?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think firstly, I'd also like to let Nexus know my Greek Cypriot flag was destroyed by Vinny and Vespa, which is why it's not hanging up right now. So that answers your question. Secondly, I think we addressed the issues that we had because if you think about it, Jess, at the beginning of the season and in the summer, they're thinking we've got Aubameyang, we've got Lacazette. I think they always thought Balogun would go on loan. Eddie was not a guarantee. Did he want to stay? Did he want to go? They were going to integrate Martinelli somehow. And we were definitely a team that needed more goals from different places, right? So we've always been a team that can score from anywhere in the past. So the emergence of these players scoring more goals in December, but only being able to score one goal in January. I can't explain that. But I do believe we needed the right back. Bellerin was not going to stay. There was always this square peg, round hole situation with the right back. Who was going to party Gabriel? He was definitely the one going forward. Saliba, they didn't think was ready. He was going to go back on loan. The investment in Ben White, some will say, is insane, but a British player in the British market, I'm sorry, guys, that's just what they go for. I think that actually Ben White would make a better midfielder than a centre-back, but I like him. I like the way he carries the ball, and I think with a little bit more time, you'll see an even better Ben White, right? Nuno, we lauded him when he came in and he deputised for Tierney, has a couple bad games. Oh, he's rubbish. Well, is he really? I think that, again, Arsenal need to be adaptable. Sambi the same. Who am I playing with in midfield? Am I playing with Xhaka? Am I playing with Partey? Am I playing with El Neni? Or am I playing with the kid in Patino? So I think Ramsdale and Tomiyasu are the best signings of the bunch. Without question. If you were going to sell them this summer, Ramsdale would probably go for 50 million and Tomiyasu could easily go for like 30, 35. So the ROI on those players has been great value. I think Ben White's value will also grow. So I think we did the right thing at the right time, addressing the key problems and issues, because we felt like Saka was going to evolve more. Emile Smith-Rowe, Odegaard was going to come back and create goals. Aubameyang was going to score more goals. Lacazette was always there. So I do feel like we did good business and it was the right moves to make, especially considering the players that they wanted to remove from the situation.
Yeah, I think I was one of the people in the summer that was like, if we don't get a midfielder, I just don't know if I'll be able to survive.
That's the one. That's the one that got away. I would agree with you there.
Yeah, and like we were in for Tammy Abraham. I also feel like that might have been the one that got away because I know people don't like Tammy Abraham because he's a old Chelsea player, but he's younger. He's not.
I would have loved
really
him.
There. They have an 80 million euro buyback clause on him, so he's not dead weight. Like they let him go and they may bring him back because he probably would have did better than Lukaku. Let's keep it real, but.
Chelsea would never have given him to us, though, would they, Jess? And also, when you're, what was it, our last Premier League game, there were 31 crosses from our team, but who's going to header the ball in? He would have been brilliant. Kevin, I said I would have taken him all day long. I agree with you there, totally. Great point.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. It's like we couldn't get Tomiyasu and Ramsdale and Tammy Abraham and the midfielder. So we had to make a decision. And I do think that they went for almost like a factory reset on the team,
Correct.
Over two big signings, but still having Bellerin, maybe having a really green Saliba. Because I kind of lean on the side of Saliba maybe needing that extra year at Marseille to really get his feet up underneath him. And so the signings made a lot of sense. We just know what needs to come next. And I agree with you that it's been Ramsdale and Tomiyasu that have been the most standout. But I also think Odegaard has stood out to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was quite a few people that did not want him to come back. They felt like he didn't have any end product to him. He was, why don't you go for James Maddison? I know I really like James Maddison, so I kind of wanted him to come in because he was older and I thought he was more established. But Odegaard, I think, has a higher ceiling. And he's really surprised me, because although he's a flair player, he has something about him that maybe Ozil didn't have about him. We've had flair players in the past that have nothing else about them but nice flicks and tricks, and he has the leadership about him as well.
Yes.
And he's only 23. And so I think he's sneakily a big signing for us at 30 million. That was probably for the value for the player that we got. I have to say, I think it's the best, even though Ramsdale and Tomiyasu have really stood out.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I don't bring him up because he was there on loan previously, and you forget, but he definitely feels like a new signing. He's been a tremendous asset to the team, and in a time where we really weren't playing well in January, you see the quality of the player because he kind of has that never give up attitude, tried to put the team on his back. He's the captain of Norway, he has leadership skills in him, as you say. And I definitely think that, there's a reason why when Aubameyang went out the team, he was Everything moved faster, right? And for him, that's the key. Now, in January, you saw less productivity. And why? Because our midfield was depleted. That midfield is the engine of everything, you know? And when you lose, and I'm not saying Xhaka is the answer, you guys, but when you lose Xhaka and Partey together, Odegaard's role becomes more diminished because what's he trying to do is trying to protect Sambi. You know, he's trying to protect the gaps between the midfield and that back line. The back line are more exposed because you don't have that protection in front of you. And I think that's why we kind of folded like cheap lawn chairs a little bit in the month of January. That midfield is really important. So, yes, I would say if there's one area that we flunked on in our summer transfer exam, midfield would definitely be one of them. And we've got to address that this coming summer.
One of the narratives that was kind of going around, during the summer was how Odegaard was going to kill Smith Rowe's career or keep him from getting better or whatever. And I have to say that I think that Odegaard has pretty much solidified himself in that 10 role. I don't think Smith Rowe is really, I think Smith Rowe is really competing with Martinelli. He's not really competing with Odegaard at the moment for that central spot. But do you think that having Odegaard in the team has put pressure on somebody like Smith Rowe to perform and to get that end product? And do you think it's making the young players better to have other players around them that they have to work to keep out of the team?
What's the one thing we've complained about with this club is competition and lack thereof. I.e., Mustafi knew he was going to start every week. Sokratis knew. Kolasinac knew. Ozil knew. Xhaka knew. Everyone knew. You didn't have to worry about your position, right? There's no harm, no foul in Emile Smith Rowe having to work it a little bit more. Saka's different because his position isn't as competitive right now, right? Who's gonna take Saka out the team? Who's better than him? Now Smith Rowe, with that same token to the Arsenal fans who complain, look how he came off the bench and scored goals. It fueled him, it fired him. And I think that to have that adaptability in the side and be able to be a little bit more flexible when it comes to how that front three or who plays behind them, depending on who the opposition is, plays, I think that's great. And look at Tierney. He came out thinking, who are you, Nuno? That's my spot. You may have played a few games well. I'm back now, right? You're getting that a little bit. Martinelli, I can play better than you on the left, Aubameyang, and you're the captain of the team. We need that more. We've needed that more. We've got that now. And I think Emile Smith Rowe is going to continue to do well in this side. Hopefully the difference is, Jess, that we're not seeing them a little bit more because we don't have European football.
Right.
And that's the difference. And now we're out the cups.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit harder for him, but he's going to have a say in what we do in these next 17 games in the Premier League. No doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. Smith Rowe to me is somebody that we don't quite know what he is yet. There's a lot of Arsenal fans that kind of project that he's going to be some 8 or number 10 or whatever. We don't know what Smith Rowe is going to be. And I think that that's the beauty of Smith Rowe is that he could probably do so many things. And so let's not try to pigeonhole him, give him his time. He's going to be really important, like you said, on the back end of the season, probably Pepe as well. So, and they both have goals in them. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right that they're going to be really important. But Odegaard, I think, has made it. I think he has added so much to this team, and Martinelli coming in as well has really made it so that Smith Rowe has to add that end product, and so he has it now. I just want to see it more, especially when he starts, because he kind of has that. Okay, I'm a super sub, I can score, but the last couple of times that he started, I kind of felt like, okay, well, maybe you don't have it from the beginning. And so maybe that's kind of something that he needs to work on. But I have to say this season, the end product from the young players has been something that I didn't really count on. I didn't think that they would be able to score the amount of goals that they have. And they had to, because Lacazette and Aubameyang weren't going to score, and Xhaka and Thomas Partey don't score. And they're carrying us again, and that's, I think, the high of the season so far is that they're adding the end product, but the low for me is that they're still always player of the month. They're always the
Yep.
players on the top of our lists. And I have to say that my player of the season so far is probably bukayo saka,
Yeah.
because he's still carrying us. Like, his back must be about to break.
Yeah.
He's literally our most important player. The end product is there. A lot of people didn't feel like he was a right winger. He
Yeah.
definitely is,
Hmm.
100%. And so I'm loving watching bukayo grow into this player. Do you have somebody so far that you think might be your player of the season
I'm in
right
total
now?
agreement. I'm in total agreement with Ramsdale has been great. Gabrielle's been solid, but consistently, Saka has been the gemstone. And I loved seeing him relaxing in Dubai. He needed a break. Get over his legs, everyone. The dude probably just popped out the water and have to swim. Give the kid a break, for crying out loud. He's young too. He's probably going to learn about, the metrosexual part of life where you got to moisturize and all those types of
Like, you
things.
need your lotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've loved seeing him relax. And for anyone who's been in Dubai, I'm so happy that he's had this time off, because we're going to need him. He needs to score more goals, though, Jess. He needs to be better with the ball in the final third, not feel like he has to be the hero all the time. Give that pass a little earlier. Don't feel like you've got to be the hero or score. Even though I want you to score more, take those chances when it's a little bit more obvious. Don't always try to make something happen when there might be a better play right in front of you. If you can get that right, I think Saka can score. I'd love to see him score like 6 or 7 goals in the next 17 games. That would be massive.
Hmm. And who's been your disappointment of the season so far?
I'm going to say, only because he's been given a chance over and over again, it's got to be Xhaka. The manager keeps
Mm,
faith with you. You get sent off against Manchester City. You get sent off again. You're supposed to be part of the leadership group. You're supposed to be, someone who's an example to these young players. And let's be honest, that red card, that last one especially, hurt us big time, bad time. And
yeah.
he has been the biggest disappointment. I'm not going to pick Aubameyang because he wasn't really playing. He wasn't really in Arteta's plans for a while. But that to me has been the biggest disappointment, because he continually gets the support of the manager.
I guess
Tony agrees.
I just know he's not great. Like, so he's somebody that when he gets the red card, I'm like not shocked that he got it. I'm kind of
Right.
numb to it, which is sad, but
Who's
I
your
do hear that.
disappointment?
Okay, so I'm gonna go Aubameyang, just because I thought we were over it. Like, I thought we were over the last season where he was going through like so much, and he did start out the season like trying to press and doing this, but it wasn't enough. Like, it just wasn't. And then when it got difficult, he stopped the pressing. The smile wasn't there. He was almost like, I think it was the Newcastle game where he was almost like an enemy of progress, where he stopped Odegaard's goal from going in. It was like one of those games. No, it was Watford. It was Watford, where he was just killing us. And I was like, okay, well, I can't with him anymore.
Yeah.
And so now that he's gone, it has been a little bit of a disappointment also because of the way that happened. It just unraveled, and he was the captain and all of that. But I also will put what Maya said up here. It's of the senior players. It's Aubameyang, Thomas Partey, and Xhaka. It's all of them. It's all of them, really. Lacazette can
Yeah.
get away with it because we know he's probably doing as good as he can. And when he is out there, he tries to lead. But Thomas Partey, there's a lot of Thomas Partey in here, Granit Xhaka. But Thomas Partey is one that I'm still like, okay, I know that you had a difficult time, but you literally had an interview where you said you were like a 4 out of 10 since you've been at Arsenal. You got better. You played really well against Man City, and then you got sent off the next time that we saw you. So, I mean, he has a couple of months really to turn this narrative around, but he's kind of veering into the flop category at this point. And that hurts me to say because he's literally one of my favorite players and I think he's so talented.
Hmm.
But I think the story of the season really is that our young players are really really good, but our senior players are non-existent, and that's an issue. It
Yeah.
really hasn't changed. It really hasn't.
Thomas Partey definitely is one that people expect more of. You know what I mean? So yeah, he's got to step it up. We need to see more of him from that Liverpool game. You know what we need to see more of that consistency, more of that leadership as well. And he comes back, and within 5 minutes, the dude gets sent off. I mean, again, senior players letting the younger players down.
100%. All right, there's about 140 of you guys here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Just a couple more questions for Soph about the
Hit
season
that
so
like button,
far.
people.
Hit the like button. Um, I guess, you know, we've already kind of talked about the cups, and I know it's been like a really big disappointment. So now we only really
Huge.
have, yeah, it's not great. And I just have to say this really quick that the narrative that being out of the Europa League has helped us, I think, will prove to be false. Just like being out of the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup is some good thing that's going to allow us to focus. I don't think that's necessarily what it is, and I'm very disappointed that we're not in any of the cups. But I look at Arteta and I just think maybe he's not a good cup manager. He doesn't really know how to manage a squad to make sure that everybody is engaged at all moments. And it kind of feels like you're either in or you're out. It's like I have my starting 11 plus maybe one or two players holding an ESR, and everybody else outside of that is either sitting on a contract, waiting to go, or on the outs. And we're
Hmm.
talking about like our Pepes and, Aubameyang was kind of on the outs. And it just doesn't feel like he's able to use the squad in a way where we can be competitive in more than one competition. And that's proving to be somewhat of a thing. And he's not going to be able to fix that before the end of the season because we're out of all of the cups. But that is something
I
that,
think we've been more of a cup team though than a league team. I mean, he took over from Emery and won the cup. I think we're a one-off game type team mentally because we can't be engaged 38 games the way Liverpool are, the way City are, the way Chelsea are. We just don't have that capability
well,
mentally.
I'm not saying that we're a league team. I'm just saying we can only focus on one competition at a time. So if we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
if we have a game week and we have 3 games in that week, we're probably only going to win one or two of them.
yeah. We
We
can't
can't,
multitask.
yeah, we
Yes.
can't we can't multitask, and I think that comes down to the way that Arteta manages the squad. I think
Hmm.
because the players that are on the bench know that they're not really fighting for anything. No, they're not going to start in the Premier League, so it's just kind of like, okay, we're here. And in January, that's how it felt to me. Everybody that kind of came off of the bench they didn't have it.
Hmm.
Cedric, he just didn't have it. Like he had no juice. Like he was dry as hell, and I'm just like, he needs to do better with that. And there are some things that I would like to see at the back end of the season from Arteta in terms of bringing Pepe back into the fold, keeping
Me too.
ESR engaged and stuff like that. Is there anything else you need to see from Arteta at the back end of the season to convince you? Or because I mean, they have contract talks, and even though that I know that they can sack him at any moment, it's not a big deal. But
Right.
he is being looked at as somebody that the Cronkies really trust. Is there something that he needs to do for you to be convinced?
I think his agent's done a great job of trying to suggest that Man City, like, you
Mhm.
got to protect him because when Pep leaves, City want him, right? So brilliant from his agent. Well done to you. I don't think Arsenal should be doing any deal with him before we know if he qualifies for Europe. You can't get us out of Europe and not get us back into Europe and expect to keep your job at the Arsenal Football Club. But our standards have always have shifted, right? And if they do believe this is a long-term plan and they're modeling it on Sean McVay and what he's done with the LA Rams, yes, we've gone to a Super Bowl and lost it, but we've won NFC championships too, and we're back in the Super Bowl again here. I know the two sports don't correlate, but it's about believing in a young coach and giving them the time. for me, he's got to get us back into Europe. If he doesn't do that, he's got to be sacked. Because now this is his team, right? And it's not because we can win the Champions League or we can win the Europa League. We could have won it. We could have won it with him, but he failed tactically in those semi-finals. The point is being able to have the financial capability that brings and what that allows you to do in the marketplace and the player that you can attract. Edu said it on Sky Sports. We've built the team on youth. The next phase is to bring in world-class players. World-class players just want to play in Europe. That's just a fact. Gone are the days where world-class players just want to be like, oh, I want to play for the Arsenal. In all those years that Wenger was reigning and Emery, and at the start of Arteta's reign, we had European football, even if it was the Europa League carrot to dangle. So he needs to also embrace players like Pepe, and beggars can't be choosers. I.e., if things aren't going well, dude, figure out a way to integrate him. He had a good AFCON. He didn't have a bad AFCON. He had a decent tournament. So if things aren't going well, if you need to bring someone on to try and do something different, embrace Pepe for the time that you believe that he's going to be at the club. That's what I think he needs to do. His pride and ego is so massive, and every manager's is. But at our club, he's got to utilize every weapon and every tool that he has. And if he doesn't embrace that and he doesn't do that, he will fail. He really will.
Yeah. I mean, he just has to figure out a way. And like, I get what people are saying, well, Pepe's not very good and Eddie's not very good and all this kind of stuff. But I see other teams and they perform their squad. They get all the juice out of that squad. When they come, like you have players coming off the bench scoring winners. And right now we only have ESR doing that. And you just need, the next time that Saka needs a rest, Pepe needs to be able to come in and look engaged and ready to go, because it's going to happen. So that's what I really need to see from Arteta, because if you think we're going to go through these 17 games and not have a single player out, you're smoking. Like it's going to happen. It's real. COVID is still there. The injuries will still happen. So that's what he really needs to do. But where do we finish from here? What do you think?
Wow, $64 million question, Jess. We have to finish in a European spot. We cannot finish in the European garbage Conference League spot. We don't need that. And I actually feel like Spurs or United will finish 4th, 5th. And then it's between, I think West Ham might choke a little. If our best 11 is available, if our best 11 is ready to go, we've got a shot at 6th, but I think we're finishing 6th or 7th. That North London derby, oh boy.
That might be the decider, won't it?
Yeah.
I do think, I agree with you. I think that as long as other teams can play crap and win games, and we have to be damn near perfect to win, I think we're going to have a difficult time going above them. And I still have yet to see us, when they drop points, take advantage of it. We haven't been able to do it yet. So I think we'll finish 6th or 7th. And I don't necessarily feel like that means that we were terrible. We just weren't good enough, And so for me, he has to finish in 6th or higher, to continue on. But we'll definitely see what happens. And we're finally getting back to some more football. I think the fan base needs it. I think we need to see our team play again and remember that we're a decent team, because the talk on Twitter is just too much for me. And
it's too much.
It's definitely
too much. And I tell you, if he ends up finishing 4th with this squad, right? Yeah, it's going to be a little bit like Wenger, though, winning an FA Cup, for those fans that don't like him. Oh, man, we're stuck with him. He managed somehow to finish 4th. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
100%. All right, Sophie.
I got to duck out.
Yeah, so can you let everybody know really quickly where to find you before you go?
Yeah, hit us up at Highbury Squad on YouTube. I'm at Soccer Diva on Twitter. Thank you so much for having me. I got to run into another meeting, but Jess, loving what you're doing. Keep up the great work, smashing it. And that hair, that's fire. That's all I'm going to say. I'm out.
Much. All right,
love you. Thanks to everyone in chat. You guys rock.
Bye. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for the mid-season review. Just wanted to kind of go over the low points and the high points and just kind of review our signings and stuff like that. We'll try to get back on and do a little bit. I want to do a show on, I don't know, something more just in depth about what we need to do in terms of squad building in the next couple of seasons. So I'll try to get George and maybe Souls on for that. But until then, um, just know I'll be at least back for a match preview for Wolves. And make sure that you guys follow me on Twitter at Jacinho Tweets, as well as at SheKnowsArsenal. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.